Imposed silence is nothing else than a grotesque display of feelings, right? A coalescence of mutilated emotions. But nonetheless, it is mandatory for the rulership of humanity. Because when it is imposed, well, imposed means some new norm is being willed to be created, and most likely it is the hand of those who rule that want to impose something. Because in a society of deviance, in a society of people who are accepting to be ruled, they won't take any uh, responsibility, they won't take any action towards their well being. So, you as society are left with such decisions, and with an arsenal of pained people at the rulership. Each and every one of these narcissistic fuckers will usually do nothing else than end up creating a lot more pain for the others. Don't forget that in this sick society that we have created through our ignorance, right? This pained child that we have created, because society is nothing else than a child of humanity. Well, in this society, pain is, well, everywhere, right? But pain must also be silent, because when you look in the eyes of a pained being, right, and you see them unwilling and incapable of expressing that pain because they are intimidated by you, well, as an ignorant person, that is basically mission accomplished, right? This is what technically society is doing. You're not allowed to do or say literally anything that is other than what is societally a norm, right? Societally accepted. So silence is said to simply grow like a cancer. But cancer also is in the minds of the people. Because when you don't use your mind correctly, you're creating kind of a cancer, right? Cancer means when a bit of you turns against you. And what good are the people around you other than gaslighting you? And what is gaslighting? Well, creating a little part within you that will act just as a little virus, right? It will turn against you. That is how society works. If it ain't for your parents to turn against you, if it weren't for school to simply dumb you down, if it weren't for mass media to dumb you down, you'd probably be a wise being, well, living a happy life. But as a society, you wouldn't want that, because ignorance creates more ignorance. And ignorance creates only pain, and pain people tend to be either sociopathic or narcissistic, as well as, well, most likely other comorbidities and, other distortions of personality. But personality is just an accumulation of things, thoughts, ideas, because when you came into this world, you are zero. You are nothing, right? You didn't have any ideas, any concepts about life. They were just thought, right? So everything came from an external source. Now the point is, you wouldn't want to exploit the internal source because obviously you don't want to find out what and who you truly are, right? You have to keep preserving the lie because, well, lying is silence, right? Because as long as you're speaking lies, well, you're keeping silent, right? It doesn't matter how many lies you speak, you're always keeping silent. Because only the truth is vibrant. Only when you speak the truth, you create ripples, right? Because, well, if there are 1,000 candles, you only need one to be lit, to simply lit all others, right? And lit the whole room. That is why you either keep all candles, well, shut, or, well, you kind of, well, lose things from your control, right? So, society requires silence because silence equals consent, right? They are perfect synonyms. When people are being asked about things, obviously many will be silent because, well, they have given up their freedom willingly, right? Everyone simply gave up their freedom willingly because as long as you are accepting to live in a sick society, well, all your freedoms simply don't exist. They are just things that you find in papers like constitutions and such, but who cares about that? Those were just created for the naive to believe, because, honestly, have you ever seen someone to simply respect the law? Well, probably law enforcers and such, but isn't it funny that every time society, you know, goofs, it's always called democracy, it's always called, the right of the people and such, but every time you goof around, well, where are the rights of the people, right? And, well, what is the first thing that you are being told when you do something so-called against the law? Well, you have the right to remain silent, right? Silence. And once you remain silent, well, that is technically consent, right? If you remain silent in the face of a predator, well, that is their consent to take a snack. Now, it doesn't mean that if you shout at a predator, you will, uh, you know, fear them, right? But, the idea of silence means not taking any action. Because, as I said, as long as you support the truth, that is when you simply create the ripples. And obviously, when you create the ripples, that is when you create change. But society doesn't want change because crazy people, pained people, narcissists are afraid of change. They are well too attached to something and, well, they are too invested in their own suffering to ever accept change, right? Suffering doesn't come in flavors. You don't change those, right? Those flavors change you. And so the point is, with society, the more silence it imposes, then it simply comes for your children. Because you don't matter, you're just a battery that's growing in size physically speaking, but it always has kind of the same amount of energy. The more the better, obviously. That is why empaths are always the biggest target, because their healing energy is far more important than, ignorant energy. Ignorants are way too invested in 1,000 ideas, so they're already having thousands of black holes in their mind, because when you create a thought that you can't escape from, it's technically like a little black hole that is feeding off of you. So you're a big problem to society because you don't have much energy left to simply, allow society to survive as an organism, right? And when an empire falls, well, a lot of people have to die, but, well, because you have to keep the silence somehow. You wouldn't want to disturb our neighboring planets, right? You wouldn't want to disturb the neighboring solar systems with, your vibrancy of life. You just have to feel that you are, free, and, you have a sense of liberty. Not that you actually have those, right? Those are just written on some pieces of paper. If something is written on a piece of paper, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is true. Think about so many people who have all so many diplomas. Just some bits of paper that don't matter at all. Even if they're fake or not, it still doesn't matter. How many diplomas one earned in their life, that's not gonna be a number written on their cross after all. If they're gonna have a cross at their funeral. So silence is very important to rule people, because when you keep people silent, you don't have to ask them about things, right? You can't ask people who are silent about things because, well, silent people don't speak, right? Lambs don't speak if they're afraid. And if they don't speak, then it means you're always free to do your whatever things, right? And you always have to go for the children, right? Narcissistic folks and, ignorance who rule society always go for the children, because adults are just a coalescence of uselessness. They have outgrown their purpose and, well, they have to be discarded because, according to some dumb people's ideas, there are already too many people on this planet. Funny thing is, if you move, for example, if you go by train, for example, in some of the biggest countries like Russia or the USA, you'll go from one big city to another. It will probably take you several hours by train, right? And this is the best proof that this planet is being simply, overridden by humans, right? Is being overcrowded by humans, right? Obviously, humans are doing their own problems, yes. Obviously, corporations, but you just have to keep silent about that because you don't want people to suffer even more by presenting them the truth, right? Because after all, it's your fault that they are doing things in the end, right? They are just ignorance who are doing things. You don't have to be ignorant as well to allow that. So the point about silence is it's just a very good way, if not the best way, to simply propagate your ideas, right? And always go for the children. Because adults, well, they simply become too invested in their own pains and, well, they simply give in way too easily, right? And just like that, all the devils in the world always have a problem, right? Because there is no challenge in people who simply submit instantly, right? Or fight a little and eventually submit. The biggest fight is with those who simply resist temptation, right? And that is when you finally feel like a devil, right? You have to tempt people. If they just give in like usually adults do, because most of them are dumb anyways, kind of too dumb to live anyways, the point is, well, you always have to focus on the children because, well, they are the future generations. Whoever controls the children, well, also controls the future generations. And obviously, since as a narcissistic fucker you're suffering a lot, everyone else in your eyes will most likely have to suffer millionfold, right? So you have to make sure that their children are dumbed down, right? Because if they're not dumbed down, they can't be silent, right? It takes 25 years for the brain to develop its emotional state. So that goes to show that young people are harder to control, and they are very curious about things, and that's why you have to teach them all the wrong things in school, right? All the useless things that they won't make any use of in life, and then, well, it's much easier to silence them, because once you teach them rubbish, well, they'll always be confused, and, well, confusion is one of the biggest steps towards silence, because if you're confused, you don't know what to speak anyways, right? And then you can use simply gaslighting, right? Everything you're saying is wrong. It kind of happens, right? You're being taught that indirectly in school. Everything you're gonna say is wrong, right? You're always afraid of the teacher because you're afraid of mistakes, right? Mistakes are bad in society, right? You don't want to commit mistakes, right? The rich people don't commit mistakes, right? They just learn from mistakes, but you must not commit mistakes because, well, there are things to be learned from mistakes, right? If you only do the right things, aka those which society puts in your head, well, then you're a good lamb. But, well, the problem is, well, lambs are only being taken to the slaughter. Well, once they are being taken to the slaughter, well, they become a bit more silent than usual, right? You no longer need to bother about their, being silent or, loud anymore, right? They're silent for good. That is why people go through a lot of deaths in this world, right? They die a lot, slowly and surely. Well, societal statistics say that most of the people usually die around the age of 20 to 30, right? Even if they're buried at the age of 70. But, when there is nothing in between the years, well, you can call that person dead. And when they're dead, well, they can't be more silent than that. All this being said, you are appreciated. Take care of yourselves. Ferenc Board signing out.